Hi, this is Erin Kincaid, and I'm in session 2 of the Wounded Parent Workshop and Curriculum. This time we're going to be talking about our emotions and start to process through who the Lord is in all of this and kind of working through all of the hard things we've been going through. The first thing we've got to do is we've got to reflect on what we've already discussed. So since we were together the last time, we talked about the path that got us here, how we ended up in this space, maybe some misgivings, some moments where we blocked our own memory of what was really taking place or our own reality of what has happened or is happening. So it was a real reality bite type situation where we have to stop and say, okay, now I'm really looking at this through the Lord's lens, which is truth and always with truth. And now I need to process my involvement in it from an emotional standpoint and the choices standpoint. So this is what we're going to talk about now. First of all, when our children go astray, the reign of emotions is absolute insanity. There have been some very unproud moments that I have participated in which I look back and just cringe and think, oh, I cannot believe I lost my temper. I lost my mind, especially with who I am and what I've been called to do, that I've done exactly what I've instructed parents not to do when I was faced so much fear or facing so much fear with my child. When your child goes astray, your emotions tend to take over. Point blank. I don't care if you have all the education in the world and this is what you do for a living. When your child is possibly harming themselves, possibly changing their life forever, the emotions that are involved in our body and the way that those sensations take over in the body they can either be debilitating or they can be the fuel that launches a rocket that's going to blow up like we've never seen before. The variety of emotions it's on a spectrum too. It can be anger, disgust, sadness, fear, surprise, grief. I wrote down remorse, resentment, aggressiveness, embarrassment, shame, guilt, self-pity, hurt. It literally is endless. So we need to talk about that. We need to put down all of the words that we've been feeling. And in your resources, you not only received a series of questions to ask with each of these sections, but also an emotional word wheel. We use that a lot in counseling. In our offices, we have it put on pillows where clients can actually hold the pillow and turn it around and choose the emotion that they'd like to best describe. The rule is that you're never allowed to use the 4 or 5 words in the center circle because I call those plastic words. Those are words I'm mad, sad, glad. But those don't have any feeling anymore. But you use them as cue points, triggers to go into the outer circles to stop and say, okay, I think I'm feeling mad, but I'm actually feeling rage. And out of my rage is whatever the word is, I want to go from there. So if you've got those resources, please pull those emotion word wheels out. We're going to use them in this activity. We need to understand that the basic function of emotions is survival. When we're afraid, we try to survive, right? If back in the day, if T-Rex was coming at a human with a spear, that human's going to run into a cave and try to get safe. If a saber-toothed tiger was coming after someone in your tribe, someone in your clan, someone in your group of people, you were going to use stones to try to fight that animal or use your feet to run away. That was an emotion of fear and threat. So those things that we feel, it's all about survival mechanisms and coping mechanisms. Emotions are nature's way of equipping the human personality to cope with the danger, threat, or loss. And right now, if you're a wounded parent, you are feeling those 3 things: danger, threat, and loss. It may be loss of a dream. It may be the loss of a child. It may be the loss of finances, the loss of security. It may be loss of a value system, but you are feeling danger, threat, and loss. And in one sense, we choose our emotions and our response to our stimuli, but often our choices are learned. They are learned reactions from our upbringing, and they can often be more subconscious than conscious. And I'm not saying this to give you an excuse for bad behavior or unholy behavior, but it's a reason. And we need to understand so that we can be those mature parents I talked about in session 1. What happens, and let me see notes here. So through the years of our growth and development, we have learned, for example, to respond with grief when we experience loss. A child who runs away is a loss. The parent responds with grief and with worry. A child who breaks the law and is arrested is a moral disappointment. The parent may respond with embarrassment in the light of exposure. The family's reputation is being threatened. They might also respond with anger and authority to come in, and if I show my anger, my disapproval, I'll show the world and the people around me that I don't agree with my child's choices. We perceive others as wanting to know if we agree with our child's behavior, and our embarrassment communicates that we do not agree, and it is our effort to preserve the family's reputation or sometimes our own reputation. However, the major problem is what might be called the range of emotions. So emotions can be so intense and so mixed that sound reasoning and clear judgment are hard to achieve. A wayward child will not be helped by an emotionally upset, immature, and distraught parent. I'll say that again. A wayward child will not be helped by an emotionally upset, immature, or distraught parent. He or she needs understanding, rapport, patience, and acceptance. Now, this is not acceptance of the sin or the behavior. They still need to know that they are loved and there is a safe place to return when they're ready. And there's a safe place to come back and work these things through. It will help if parents, if you can understand your mixed emotions and your controlling feelings and learn to cope with these instead of learning to control with these. And controlling self, yes, but not controlling others, because you might discover that your control doesn't really control anything and it's a losing battle, because children tend to teach us that real early on when they've gone astray. You also might discover some deeper emotions that are inside of you, especially using that word wheel, that will help you get to a place where you can say, I now understand what I'm really feeling. And it's not as surface as I'm angry. It's actually I'm under threat. And my threats are from my past repeating itself, or my child being like me. And I work so hard to break away from that. I don't want them to go through the pain that I went through. It can be a myriad of things. These are just examples. So it's important for parents to understand the reasons behind their anger and their feelings and to discover that you have choices in your response to your child's behavior. Anger and resentment can often lead us to behaving in a manner that we know is unholy and unrighteous. But we have to understand that, first of all, anger is the solution, is God's solution to our life's problems. He gives us the ability to get angry to protect the boundaries He's given us to protect. The problem is that when we use that anger to try to control the things that are out of our control, or we use it in a way trying to gain control in an unholy or unrighteous manner. This is why staying so tucked in tight with Jesus is super important, and staying so bonded to God, having Him being a big G in your life and you're a tiny little dot tucked inside that G, right inside that little covering that He provides in that big G God concept, so that we can say, Lord, I'm going to walk out this anger with you and only come out and do what you've asked me to do, but always remaining in your protection. The subconscious reasoning behind anger is this. First, I want something. Second, if you won't let me have it or prevent me from having it, that's when my anger will come out. Third, this frustrates me. Fourth, people who frustrate me are bad. Fifth, bad people should be punished. And sixth, I will punish you with my anger. This comes from some research, but these are often basic premises behind anger. And if we stop and break them down, we can recognize where we may have fallen off the Lord's path for the use of our anger so that it can remain righteous and actually help us get the job done in the way that He's asking us to. So right now, take a moment. And there's two activities that you're going to do here. First of all, you're going to name all of your emotions. Get them all out. Take some time. You're not going to do this just in one sitting with your group or in just one journal sitting if you're writing, but I want you to start just letting it flow. Use the word wheel that's been provided for you, or look it up on your phone or on Google and go through all the possible words that you might have felt in this process and write them down. Get familiar with them. If you don't understand what they mean, look them up. It's important you understand what's going on inside of your body. So if you'll take a break, I'd like you to do that. And if you would like a visual aid, you can also do an iceberg. So you can draw the water line where maybe it's the emotions you've shown on the outside, which is the tip of the iceberg, and under the waterline, all of the other emotions you've been feeling. So if you'd like to do that in a visual aid, you can do that as well. Or you can just popcorn these down on a piece of paper and just put everything down or share verbally what you're feeling. I truly believe that putting this on paper, whether you're in a group setting or not, is more powerful than just speaking it. Seeing our emotions on paper can help us identify the needs that we have in the next section and the next activity. So after you get done writing down your emotions, what I want you to do is to go through my list, and I'm going to say it again slowly. There are subconscious reasons behind anger. I'm going to read them out, and I want you to try to write down the ones that you think, yes, I've experienced a part of this or some of this, or maybe all of these. First, I want something. My anger is based on a want that I have. I want you to stop embarrassing me. I would to stop this behavior. I want you to leave these friends behind. Number two, you won't let me have or you're preventing it. Your behavior as a child, your rejection of our values, you're preventing me from my wants. Third, you're frustrating me. I'm frustrated. My plans are frustrated. All the plans and all the money and all the investments and everything I've done has been frustrated. Fourth, people who frustrate me or frustrate my plans are bad. And what you've done is wrong. And you're making bad choices because you frustrated my plans. Fifth, bad people deserve to be punished. When you make unhealthy choices, bad choices, there are consequences and there are punishments that come along with that. And six, I will punish you with my anger or my response because I want to get you to know what you've done so you'll get back on track and come back to this family and come back to us as your parents. Do you find yourself in any of these 6 sections with these emotions that we just talked about? Take a moment now to process through this, and it shouldn't be something you rush through. Take as much time as you need. Maybe you're going to stop this and come back to it in a few days after you've processed on your own or in the next class together. But this is a huge part of this, and really trying to dig up what's going on inside of you. So we have to have that foundation. So don't take this lightly or rush through. And if you're working with a professional at this time, this would be a great time for you to take these notes to your counseling session or to your biblical counseling session and working through these things that you're feeling so that they can help you sort those things out, and also how you may have attached one of these 6 things to this section. These will be available in your notes. If you haven't already found them, they are available in your notes for quick reference. And so if I talk too fast or you didn't remember everything, don't worry. You've got it in print as well. And I'll see you in a little while. Okay, we are back. So we have to understand that asking ourselves the emotions that we're having will help us realize how we've been responding. So first of all, if you are responding with embarrassment, often it's from the crux of what will others think. Embarrassment is a form of public shame. Society is so controlled or directed by other people's expectations, it's insane. If we fail to meet those expectations, especially in issues of morality, we may experience shame, disgrace, or embarrassment, and failing to meet others' expectations can be seen as a type of moral failure. What happens is it really does matter what other people think. It does. I mean, it shouldn't, but it does. And often when we're feeling embarrassment, it's because it matters what other people think. It should not matter. It should only matter what God thinks. But if we're really honest, we do put other people's opinions on a pedestal, and we actually end up living for that over living for what God has asked us to live for. The most important thing is that what your wayward or your son or daughter thinks of you is important. So right now, your behavior is important. What they think of you. They may think badly of you. They may have divorced you in a sense, but you need to hold it together and find your decorum and your righteousness and put that on display, not self-righteousness, not piousness, but your righteous display of God's love and God's behavior in their life, so that they don't have to ask the question of, will God stop loving me? Because when parents stop loving their children or they feel like they're no longer loved, they're ultimately answering that question, could God stop loving me? Because we're given the gift of acting like, well, God. We're called to be like God, right? We're called to be like Jesus. That's what we're working towards. So every action we take is an exemplification of how we understand his love and his graciousness towards our children. And they're watching how we love them. Essentially, if we call ourselves Christians, which if you're in this, you're a Christian, I'm sure, because we're a Christian institution giving Christian truth here. So if you are a Christian parent, you're exemplifying the kind of parent that you believe God to be to your own child. And your children, that's what matters, what they think about your actions. I'd rather have them think that I don't want to live like my parents because, well, they're so tied up with the Lord, and they're so much like him that I just don't want to do that anymore. I want to live in my sin. I'd rather them say that because you're living the way you're supposed to be living than to say a myriad of other things about your behavior. Embarrassment is something morally wrong that your child has done, and it's a form of selfishness. Okay? It's selfish. They're choosing themselves. But welcome to the human experience. Every human is born with selfishness. There's an over concern for ourselves and an under concern for someone else. And the problem is if we lose ourselves as parents, we're behaving just like our children, because then there's an over concern of yourself and ourselves and an under concern for them. So there's a message in your child's behavior. Are you seeking to understand it? Or are you overlooking it in your concern for what other people think if you find that your emotion is embarrassment? So once again, if you find yourself in the camp of feeling embarrassment, then these are the questions you'll need to ask yourself. The next emotion you might be feeling is self-pity, and this is where you just want to cry. It's another form of selfishness. It's self-pity because you have your eyes on yourself. Self-pity can be overwhelming. It can be a debilitating feeling. It can produce a deep form of depression. And it can what people who feel self-pity need to do is to turn to other people for understanding and advice, but not to join them in licking their wounds and not to join them in saying, oh, poor you. No, we don't need that. We don't need to feel, oh, poor me. We need to understand my heart is hurting. I am at a loss. There's so much pain inside of me, and I am aching, and I need someone to know that. At the same time, we need to understand there's no solution in self-pity. So when we feel self-pity, it's not that we're supposed to solve it alone. We're supposed to solve these things with other believers. You don't have to be self-pitying when you walk with other believers in this. So then that selfish tone that comes with self-pity now becomes a shared experience of walking this journey out and really becoming the Erin and the her of holding the arms up of the person who is in the battle and carrying them and walking them through this. So the clincher of this emotion, if you're having the self-pity emotion, the oh, woe is me, licking my wounds, I just want to cover my head and pretend I'm like I'm the only person hurt in this situation, you need to ask for help and not for pity. Pity can make us feel like we're loved again and make us feel like people see us, but we can actually be seen by asking for help and working through this and not pitying ourselves and then rejecting anyone's involvement in that, because that's really the I would say the catch of self-pity is that we never allow someone to come in and help us walk through it and actually do the work. We just stay in the wound licking process. The next feeling or emotion you might be feeling could be grief. I would assume that everyone watching this is feeling some sort of grief. Um, some people have even said, I could handle death better than this pain. The loss of a child, the potential loss of a child, the walking around thinking that my child has rejected me. What does this say about me? That grief can be, well, life-changing in the worst of ways. Grief is a response to loss. And for many, many people, when that peer influence is strong over our children or when they've actually divorced or rejected us, that prevailing emotion is grief. It's deep loss. It's shock, emotional release, lots of crying, preoccupation with the loss. You can't get unhooked. You just keep looping over and over and over again. There might be symptoms of physical distress, gritting of the teeth, sickness in the tummy, tension in the neck or the head, headaches. You might feel depression, guilt, anger, withdrawal. You might have realistic expectations of changes that don't make sense, and so you can't really cope with the stages you're going through. We have to learn how to resolve unresolved grief. We have to get an adjustment to reality. And believe it or not, the work that we did in our first session together actually leans into this space. So that's why I give it to you first at the beginning, that unveiling of the story, that reality bite I asked you to take part of, because it actually helps you process your grief. It helps you actually lean into that space and say, okay, this is what's truly going on. And this is now you're saying how I truly feel about it. We have to learn how to handle our grief. When we can handle our grief, we can better support our children if they turn back towards us, even for a glimpse or a cast over their shoulder. But we can also help others that are in pain, even when we don't feel like it. And in solidarity, we can walk this journey together. Another feeling or emotion or sensation you might be having is actual physical pain in the body. And you might even ask yourself, how can this hurt so much? Pain results from being rejected. It's a detachment process. When we are babies and we're born and on this earth and we're crying, someone picks us up and loves us, we attach. As parents, we attach to our children. Our DNA attaches to their DNA. And we're in this fight together. If you're cold and you need a hug and you need to be soothed, I'm going to attach to you and I'm going to be that person that provides that love. When a child or a person rejects us, they are detaching from us, and our body does not know what to do. It causes actual physical pain. Those hurt feelings are often actual hurt feelings in the body. The pain that results from this disappointment tends to force us to choose emotions we wouldn't normally choose, to the point where we actually feel like we're not even choosing our emotions. It's just coming on and we can't even respond with our head before our mouths and our other body members, our hands, our screamings, the lamenting comes on. And the lamenting is needed. Often it can come in the wrong place where we're lamenting and licking wounds and not actually lamenting to the Lord so that he can sit with us in our pain and invite him into that space. When we tend to choose our emotions, then when I experience the emotional pain, it's because I have chosen to hurt. No one else can hurt my feelings. I choose to be hurt. Now, this feels very instinctual because a lot of what we're feeling is in that detachment process. There is an actual physical detachment, but the words I put to that detachment process are crucial in this emotional component. What that means is that you can choose to say, I feel great worry about the loss of my child no longer speaking to me because I don't know what to do with my time and these ruminating thoughts in my brain. So I will seek to understand myself and care for myself in this confusing and discombobulating time. So what I just showed you was a component that we use often in counseling. I feel about because so I will. I feel about because so I will. And often that so I will is not always in a secular version of therapy. It's often I feel about because. But the so I will shows that we still have voice and choice. We still have that free will God gives us. We still have autonomy to involve ourselves in the response to our actual pain and emotion. So right now, for a moment, if this is where you find yourself in physical pain, which I suspect many do, I'd like you to stop and work through those four things, those four statement parts, and work through it as often as you can. Use your word wheel that you have now and describe, I feel what, about what, because of what, so I will. I feel about because so I will. So stop and do that in your journal, or maybe as a group, go around and share one of your I feel abouts. I feel this about this because of this, so I will do this. Go ahead and take a break, and I'll see you in just a bit. Okay. Next emotion on our list, and thank you so much for doing that activity. I hope it's given you some clarity and also brought some cadence and some calming to your body. The next emotion you might be feeling is guilt, that somehow this is your fault. If that's the case, know that that's a very common emotion. Guilt is, I think, this moment you begin gestating a child, you feel guilty. You feel scared to death. It's such a hard thing. Am I doing everything right? Am I eating all the things that I should while growing this child inside of me? And when the child comes out of the mother's womb and is now in your arms, am I doing the bottle right? Am I getting up fast enough when they cry in the middle of the night? Am I providing everything I can? Parenthood is ridden with guilt and worries of things that we're doing wrong. When our child goes astray, this guilt is that somehow it's my fault, and this is the result of our own parent failure thoughts. So we become sorry parents. We have to understand that all parents make mistakes, though. And just because you made mistakes in one area does not necessarily mean that this is your fault. Maybe some of it is to blame and you need to reconcile with that. But we need to make an effort to teach each generation how to adult the next generation and understand that that's going to come with some mistakes or maybe even things that you didn't think were mistakes at the time. I didn't think putting my child on that plane and sending him to Germany, something we dreamt of all of these years because that was our old mission field. That's where our friends and family were. We did not think that that was going to be a problem. We didn't think that he would stumble across people we didn't know who would influence him politically. We didn't know. It didn't feel like a mistake. Looking back, it was not in its entirety. We don't regret sending him. We regret parts of what we didn't do while he was overseas that has now had an impact as he's been growing as a young adult. So that's the part of the reality we have to look at. To blame oneself is rarely ever productive, though. To blame oneself is very rarely ever productive. And our children are responsible for their own decisions. There may be parts that you do need to reconcile your own sin patterns in or your own choices in, but to blame yourself for an entire situation is often untrue, inaccurate, unrealistic, and also unhelpful. It's just not productive. Us knowing that we would have done things differently when our son went overseas, the parts that were done differently, that's the part that we reconcile and work through. Parents have a great deal of influence on our children, but when we have tried to do what seems to do our best and a child chooses to go astray, then what earthly good does it do to give ourselves, as the parents of that child, a guilt trip? What good does that do? When you've done your very best, when you've done everything you've thought and you've reconciled the parts that you did mess up on, how does it help to walk in guilt? Well, it doesn't, because then that's shame. And what happens is I like to, if you've known me at all in counseling, I liken guilt and shame as two laundry piles. The laundry pile of shame is that you're in the middle and it's that heavy, like those dirty jeans, that muck and the mire. It's a wet, heavy blanket that's got a mildew smell and it's coming down on you and down on you and down on you. And all of a sudden you feel like Jonah in the whale's belly. You are trapped and you cannot breathe and you don't know which way is up and down and you don't know if you're getting out. You are suffocated by the mess and the muck and the grossness of your situation. That's shame. And the enemy wants you to feel shame because he wants you to feel stuck and immobile and that you don't have any choices, that you can't see a way out. Guilt, same laundry pile, but the Lord puts us on top of it. And we can sort out, burn that, clean that, sort that, wash that, treat that delicately, wash that on a gentle cycle, and carefully put that back where it belongs. Maybe even wash it and put it up for another season to be dealt with, because this is not the season to look at that right now. That's the guilt pile, because guilt is based in sin. And if it's your sin, there's always something you can do for reconciliation. So if you are feeling guilt and you are feeling shame, you need to first divide out the two and figure out where you're at. And if you are feeling guilt that is not yours, you need to reconcile the parts that are and release the parts that aren't. On top of that, we have the feeling of fear. If your next emotion is fear, often the question is, what will become of my child? What will become of our family? What does this mean for the long haul? Fear is wrapped up in the unknowns. There's no way for us to be able to say what's going to happen in the future. Yet it's a question we ask ourselves over and over and over again. A serious aspect of this fear is when it gets out of control and the child knows that and even uses that fear to manipulate the parent. Fear can immobilize you in a way that you never thought and cannot see a way out of. Being a kind, supportive parent can go out the window when you're afraid. It can also be the root of your anger. So you're feeling all this fear and all this threat because really fear is threat. You are under some kind of physical or emotional threat. And so your anger will show up to try to solve that problem and it comes out really just a mess. And so when fear tries to get a foothold on the life of a parent, we have to recommit ourselves and our children to the hands of God. There is just really not much more you can do outside calming the body, breathing deeply, practicing your I feel abouts because so I wills, practicing the process and saying, what do I have the power to control? What can I do? What am I feeling? Making healthy choices from there, but then saying, Lord, you got to take them and you got to take me. I am throwing myself on the altar and begging for mercy. I'm asking you to carry my children in a way that I obviously cannot at this time. And it is the only way to really soothe our fear is by stepping into the hands and the space and the arms of the wonderful counselor that we call Lord and Savior so that he can carry us through that time. This is a myriad of emotions. I'm going to go back through them. It was fear, guilt, pain, grief, self-pity, embarrassment, anger, resentment. That's the myriad of emotions you might be feeling. And we have to choose those emotions, right? We have to choose the things that we are going to let dictate. In the midst of this, you can choose joy. You can choose peace. You can choose trust. You can choose patience. It won't be instinctual. It won't be the adrenaline, endorphins, and cortisol rush that your body is feeling, which so it's easy to grab onto these negative emotions. It's going to take effort, but you can choose other things. We choose emotions such as fear and anger because we learned that this is the way to protect ourselves. Anthropologically, this is how we learned to protect ourselves, that this is how we survived life way back when, and we still do, but you have other choices. And right now, you have to choose what we call productive emotions. So let's say you start feeling fear and you start ruminating on the what ifs of your child's choices, what ifs on what that means for your reputation or you in the community and whatnot. What would be a productive emotion at that time? It's really a put off, put on model that the Bible talks to us about. What can I put off and put on in place of that? So that's your next stop. I'd like you to stop and process through what am I feeling? Is it a productive emotion? Is it getting me something I need that's productive? Or am I just licking my wounds? Or am I just, oh, woe is meing this? Or am I just getting angrier? Those are not productive things, by the way. When you get to a place where you feel, okay, those are not productive, what would be a productive emotion? Because right behind a productive emotion is a healthy choice, a productive choice. So, for example, if you're feeling anger towards your spouse because they are raising the child differently than you would, whether you're married to them still or you're divorced, and the productive, the unproductive emotion is anger, to stomp your feet and say, not this is not the way we do it in my house, and I'm not going to do it this way, and I'm going to send off a letter to the court, or I'm going to scream and yell on the text thread to the whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to fight it out with my spouse. And then we have this option to say, wait a minute, this is not productive. This is not moving the dial in the direction I need it to move. What would be a productive emotion? Patience, calm, cadenced response, thoughtful response would lead me to maybe getting curious and not furious. Maybe a healthy choice would be to ask questions, to take a break, to take a step away, to pray. Do you see how that works? So we back the train up so we have new options. So right now, that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to think through what productive emotions could replace, so set up some low hanging fruit. What productive emotions could replace your unproductive emotions in this process. Now, I'm not saying all your emotions are bad. They're feelings, they're real, they're honest, they come naturally. But I'm talking about the ones when they sit too long and you're making unhealthy choices because of them. How do you then move forward in that? So I want you to take a break right now and process through those things. Remember, resolving grief is better than sinking into it, and pain needs to be transcended by unconditional love and in an atmosphere of freedom. So, right now, I want you to give yourself this atmosphere of freedom of looking at things a different way, giving yourself an alternative route to processing out some of the things that are going on inside your head and inside your body. And I'll see you in just a moment. Okay, we are back. Final stretch of this section. So, one of the other emotions that we can actually have is that jealousy emotion, that how come it's not happening in someone else's family? The emotional response to the comparison. So, while I just asked you to do that activity, I'd like you to ask yourself some questions along the lines of, did you understand your emotions when you named them? Were those easy for you to understand, or did you have to do some work to connect heart and head or body and head? In the emotions that were listed in this chapter, which ones do you most often identify with? Is there something that shows up again and again and again? And how do you handle embarrassment or shame regarding your child's choices and behavior? So answering those questions for yourself and then asking yourself in that thread and in that vein, do you compare yourself and your family to other families or the should have beens, would have beens, and could have beens of life? The problem with comparing your children, especially those who have not turned out so well, is that let me start again. The pain of comparing your children who have not turned out so well with the other families who it seems that their children have turned out that well is that you end up trying to live a Christian life and a Christian walk that isn't fruitful and it isn't honest because you're so busy comparing and aiming towards a goal that is here on earth that you forget to aim towards the goal that is heavenly. And sometimes that is much different than what we expect from our societal norms or societal expectations in our communities, right? Often we can feel like we're the loser family and that other families are winning at everything, but that's just simply not the case. That's simply not the case at all. And if you ask any therapist in any place in the United States, they're going to tell you that your problems are very normal for a lot of families. Families are just really good at covering it up, like we talked about in session one. They want to know, or we want to know often why people's families fail. We want to know why this happened to us. We want to know how do other people get through it. Those are all comparative questions and they're not productive. So that goes to what I just took you through, which is that unproductive emotions processing. Comparing ourselves is a highly unproductive emotion, feeling, and process. And what we need to stop doing is comparing ourselves to anything other than the glory of God and what He can do in our lives. Now, we are all going to fall short of that glory of Jesus and His relationship with His Father because of His ultimate sacrifice and obedience to the Father. That's what we're aiming for. So we're all going to fall short of that, which means that every parent you're comparing yourself to, they've fallen short of that, whether they're showing it or not. It turns into jealousy, though. And that's where it becomes a sin pattern. There's a longing and a jealousy that comes and a bitterness that comes when you can't make this child like that child, or you can't make your family like that family. And if we allow this jealousy, it becomes one of the strongest emotions to unhook from and can really plague our souls. You can't make your child into someone else's image as much as you want to. You can't even make them into Jesus's image. That has to be something brought on by autonomy and free will of each human being. We need to understand the cause of the behavior, the attention seeking, of whatever may be going on in the child's life. We've got to try to understand the cause of that behavior first. Then we need to let our children experience the consequences of what they're going through. You cannot cover it up or enable it. Please stop doing that if you are. You need to let your children experience the consequences of your behavior, even if it means your family's not going to look as good as the guy next door or the people at church. Even if that you think that'll bring shame upon the family name, you have to let your children go through the natural consequences. Then you need to establish mutually agreed upon and a fair set of rules by which you live by in your home, right? If they're no longer in your home and they're adult children who have wounded you, you still have boundaries that can be set and can be upheld, and they can be mutually shared. You might allow your son to come home with his girlfriend, but say if you stay in our home, you're not allowed to be in the same bedroom. I'm sorry, that's just not a boundary we're willing to break. You can still give consequences to adult children who live in your home, because a lot of adult children live in our homes still. The world is very hard for children to break out on their own because of the economic disadvantages that they experience at this time. So that may mean that you have adult children who, yes, are legally adults, but they're living in your home on your dime. And so you have boundaries and the rights to set those boundaries inside your home. It can be mutually agreed upon when they can mutually agree upon that, but also a fair set of rules that you just say, these are the standards in this home. And if you live here, this is how we do it. You can also try to talk about the cause of the problem with your child if they'll let you. Try to talk about the cause of the problem, not tell. Talking is a part of listening. You say something, they say something back. You're talking together. I should have said discussion. That's a better word. Discussing how they got to that issue, discussing how you got to that issue with them, talking about the root causes, possibilities that led them to that space, remaining calm, choosing your emotions in those moments will help you get out of the comparison cycle too, because you're actually doing the work at home instead of busying yourself doing the comparisons of what we should be like. What happens is when we compare is we often then start to put up a front because we've got to keep up our images instead of doing the work behind the walls that needs to be done. We need to speak in calm, rational language. And we need to make sure that we're living by the very standards that we set for our children. If you're telling your child to not use substances or not drink the night away, and then you end up doing that in your garage or in the backyard with all your neighbors, well, you've got a problem, sir, madam. It could be both sides. We have to live by the very standards we're setting for our children. They need that from us, and we need to do that for them. That's that form of sacrificial living. What is a productive emotion as a component or the opposite to the comparison? Well, it's rejoicing with others. It is very, very hard to rejoice with someone else when they seem to be having joy and peace and contentment and we are not. But that is the productive emotion that we can choose. We can still celebrate the blessings, the milestones, and the accomplishments of other people's children without resenting them in our hearts. We can live in a dichotomy and we can say, I'm very sad inside that my child is not here, but I can celebrate that your child is. And I am so excited. I can celebrate that you have such a beautiful relationship with your child and you're so blessed. And I am so thankful that you have that. I long for that. You can celebrate that for them and with them while still longing for your own change and growth and healing in your own life. The Lord allows us to live in dichotomies all the time, and it's very normal, and it can be done. It may be difficult, but it can be done. We can often learn from others as well. That can be another chosen thing. I can choose to live, to learn from others and how they've done it well, and not better, but well. And maybe there's something they've done that I didn't think of. I remember when my good friend Debbie told me, Erin, when my son moved out, I called him every day. And sometimes it annoyed him, but now, so many years now, he's got preteens. He picks up the phone and calls his mother frequently, sometimes daily. Sometimes life doesn't allow for it, but often calls his mother just to say, hi, how you doing? How was your day? But she said, I did that so long and so often that he just naturally started returning that back, even when I forgot to pick up the phone, after years of doing that. So she developed something very natural, and I've tried to employ a version of that works for my son and me. So you can learn when you're busy rejoicing with other people and you're able to get out of your own muck and mire and get up on their mountaintop and celebrate with them. You can say, oh man, that's something I haven't tried. I love that, how you do that. That's so beautiful. I want to take that thing and I want to bring hopefully your legacy into my own life. It may or may not work, but it's a form of celebration and honoring them. And we can choose that. And that's the big difference. It often feels that our emotions choose us. But the truth of the matter is that we choose our emotions if we let ourselves. If we become mature parents, mature individuals, we can choose our emotions. Questions to ask yourself as you take this next break is, are you caught up in the pain of comparing? How do you cope with your feelings of jealousy? Can you honestly rejoice with those parents who are rejoicing? And do you know of other wounded parents who might need you? Maybe, maybe there are people that are hurting that you've overlooked, or they've told you something's going on and you haven't checked in on them in a long time. How can you make yourself available to them? I believe very much in making purpose from our pain. I think it's the Jesus way, right? So you don't have to be qualified to reach out to someone and say, hey, how is so and so doing? I've been praying for you. Is there anything you need in this time that you haven't been given? Do you have a good support system? I just wanted to check in. I'm going through something similar and it made me think of your pain and how I may have overlooked that, but I don't want to overlook it anymore. You can be very real and very raw and step into that space with someone else. You know, when God comes to Cain, he's in Genesis 4, he says, why is your face so downcast? And I'm going to paraphrase here, but the premise is, don't you know, if you want to feel better, you got to do better. Of course, we know that Cain makes another choice and does not do better. And so obviously that perpetuates into a story we know even today and happens in families all the time. But if you want to feel better about your situation, you got to do better. And sometimes doing better is getting our eyes off of ourselves and our pain, rejoicing with others, but also standing in the pain with others and getting ourselves out of our own wound licking to sit in that space and say, I get it. It's awful. I totally understand, but we can still find things to be rejoiceful over and thankful over and bless God's name over. Okay, so take a break, come back, and we're going to do what's called the what went wrong and what if section. Okay, we are back. This is the looking back, playing the blame game. And what happens is we want to stay out of the blame game. That just point blank want to stay out of the blame game. Our emotions will take over our bodies, and then we look for someone to put the blame on. So this is why this is combined in one section, because I don't want you just to uncover your emotions and then sit with them too long. You have to understand that when you uncover those emotions and recognize them, it's very often that you accused someone of putting those emotions in your body because of the things they did wrong. One accusation is countered by another. That's how it usually happens. So you did this, no, you did this, no, you did this, no, you did this, or they did this, and then you did. It's just unending. And so what happens is that we need to understand that there are assumptions of responsibility in our child's life. There are assumptions of responsibility. Maybe the peer influence is there, and there are assumptions of responsibility in our space. But instead of asking who is to blame or whose fault is it, it might be more productive to ask, what can I or we learn from this? How can I best relate to my child now that this has all happened? How can my husband and I work or my wife and I work together to build a new relationship in spite of this pain and in spite of what we think went wrong? Staying out of the blame game is not easy. It's so instinctual. We have a justice system built into us by God. I mean, He is the judge of all, right? We're going to stand before Him. There's a part of Him in us that makes us want to see justice. But the blame game is not necessarily justice. It just makes us feel like we are getting to the bottom of things when we are not. So stay out of the blame game, though we know that it's difficult because we're often prone to defend, protect, and cover up our wounds. When we are blaming, we are defending, protecting, and covering up our wounds. I'm going to say that again. When we are busy blaming, we are defending, protecting, or covering up our wounds. And so it's painful to admit, but crucial that we admit when we are doing these things. So take a moment to ponder that. You can do this in an open discussion as a group or write it down. Ask yourself, am I defending, protecting, or covering up any of these wounds? Take a moment, write it down, discuss. Okay. Hopefully that helped uncover some of the things that you're doing, and you can see yourself in that reflective mirror of blaming yourself, blaming others, because if you are defending, you might be defending yourself and not looking at reality. And if you're protecting or covering up, well, then maybe you're too busy protecting an image or protecting your child from consequences. So there may be a lot going on there, and it's really important to ask ourselves those questions. What is wrong with a wounded parent admitting that he or she is not perfect is the next question I have here. What is wrong with us saying we're not perfect? Why do we feel we have to be super parents? It might be a great relief if you one day were discovered that your undershirt does not have a big S on it. It might be nice to actually feel like I don't have to be perfect. I can just be human. Often we want to live in a box of superhumanness, but we're actually chasing this box down here called subhumanness. This is where we beat ourselves up and we blame and we question and we worry. And so what happens is we feel bad about ourselves and we don't want to feel bad. So we go up to being super. And then we do this, go back, but then we feel bad when we make a mistake because we can't be super because we're not perfect. Then we go back up here. I have to be super. I have to be super. I have to be super. And you have this crazy cycle going on. It's crazy making. And what we need to do is just stop it and go down to this middle box called human. And in this box is where we determine, what's it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a parent in this situation? What does it mean to hurt, but also laugh? What does it mean to know that I made a mistake, but I also tried really hard? What does it mean to ask for forgiveness and still have authority in my home or in my boundary lines? That's what we have to determine as a wounded parent. How do I learn to be human with all of these emotions and all of this reality that we've uncovered in these first sessions or times together? Not all of the decisions you made were due to the parenting that you distributed to your children. That is that human box. Not everything that's gone wrong in your child's life has to do with you. Some of it is on them and has to do with other things that they've been influenced by or chosen to look into or participate in. That's a hard truth, but it's truth. And it will set you free. It's okay to have a superhuman day, to have a milestone. You think, man, I slayed this day. This was such a good day. It's okay to have a hard day. Man, I really screwed it up. I really messed up and I've got to ask for forgiveness and really reconcile some things. The point is to go up and down and to live in humanness. So you might go up to a superhuman day. You might have a subhuman experience one day, but the goal is to stay in the human box where you give yourself freedom, freedom to be, freedom to come before the Lord as you are, as parents, as spouses, as peers. So what happens is when we avoid the what if and what went wrong guilt trip is that we don't ask questions that are self-flagellating. You're not going to beat yourself up if you stop asking yourself the what if questions. They are unproductive. We have to confess our perceived mistakes. The Bible says that we must come to confession. Psalm 32, Proverbs 23, Matthew 5, James 5:16, John 1:9, lots of stuff on confession and coming before the Lord. God's forgiveness is clearly promised and eagerly offered. God's forgiveness is clearly promised and eagerly offered. Confessing your sins will lead you to understanding your mistakes so that you can do things better. But we cannot pick up sins that are not ours. So I would like you to stop now. And that's what I'd like you to think through. What parts of this have I picked up that are not mine? What parts have I picked up that belong to my child? And what parts of this have I been comparing or allowing myself to live in a state of unreality when I really need to have a nice, strong understanding of my role in this, where I need to reconcile to the Lord or to my child or to whomever else is involved? And then what parts do I need to just lay at the altar and leave there? And I would say take a nice long break now. This is not something that just can, maybe it can just pour out of you because it's right. It's something you've been needing to say. But for a lot of you listening or watching right now, you're going to need to take time to actually get to the nuts and bolts of what this looks like. So take some time, maybe take some time between sessions, between listening, and really recognize the parts that you picked up that are not yours and the parts that are that you need to reconcile. Once we do that work, that's when we ask the Lord and we confess it to the Lord. We take it to his altar and we share with him our hearts and how sorry we are. And we ask for that forgiveness that washes us over, sets us free from the bondage and the oppression that we have forced ourselves into, and that our sin and the patterns of sin around us have forced us into. We need to learn from our past, but we cannot learn from our past if we're carrying around falsely or in an understanding that is simply not true. So take a break, and I'll see you back in just a bit. Okay, I'm back. If we're going to look at our past, we must look at the self-parenting attachment styles that we have towards our children. We need to understand what kind of child we have, understand what kind of parent we were, and understand how to bless our child moving forward. Blessing does not mean giving ample gifts that they haven't, it's not buying them stuff. It's not giving them more money. Blessing them is blessing them with God's truth, with God's blessing upon their lives. There's a wonderful movie called Show Me the Father. If you have not seen that movie, I highly suggest you do. It's a Christian film, and Tony Evans talks a lot in that film about passing on the blessing father to child, but it comes from both mother and father to child. The problem is we have unblessed children, and when our children stray from us, they go into a season of unblessing. It is very hard for us to bless them when they are so, well, unworthy of the blessing, right? Just like we were when the Lord blessed us anyway with his providence over our lives. We have to understand how can we continue blessing our child. That doesn't mean accepting their sins. That doesn't mean paying them off and giving them things they don't need or enabling their sin patterns. Blessing our child can mean giving them the wisdom, the space, maybe even instilling some courage in them by saying, hey, I'm here when you're ready to talk. I'm here ready to hear you, what you're struggling with. I'm here ready to know how you got here, and I'm going to be a safe space when you get here to talk about this. That's how we bless our child. And then we show them through our maturity and our response and our behavior how to be the parent that blesses children. Because remember, this is a grandchild game. I always tell all parents that come to me, this isn't just about you and your child, this is about your grandchildren. So you got to think long game. You're teaching your children how to bless their children, and so forth and so forth. People who feel unloved will often pay any price in order to feel loved again. Let me repeat that. People who feel unloved will often pay any price in order to feel loved again. That can happen on both sides of this relationship. Parents who feel unloved by the children will often overlook things they need to call out because they just so desperately want everything better again so they can feel loved by their child. Children who feel unloved and rejected will often make more choices and go into other behaviors simply because they desperately want to feel loved again and they want to feel okay. I think we could place that as the transparency of our life. Remember those old projectors in school, the transparencies? Placing that statement over our lives, you can really start to pick apart some pieces and some things going on in your headspace and in your soul space. Maybe some prices you've been willing to pay just to feel that love again. And your children are probably doing the same thing. Parents of an unblessed, wayward child will need to somehow make up for lost time and blessing that son or daughter, and this will not be easy. Your first efforts might be met by rejection and cynicism, might be met by resentful or discomfort. Like, why are you acting this way? Why are you talking to me? Why are you being kind? But that's how we can bless our children as well, coming close to them and saying, I don't agree with you, but I love you and I still desire to be with you and around you. And I want to know you, even if I don't understand why you've chosen all these things. I'm going to be a safe space, and I hope someday you'll come into conversation with me, and so that I can hear you out and that can seek to understand the root causes of what got you here. Not seek to understand and agree, but seek to understand how you got here. That is a blessing. And acceptance of your child, in spite of their behaviors and their sins, avoids judgmental condemnation. I think we all want that, because if we had God's judgmental condemnation, none of us would be here right now in the first place. That acceptance communicates the fact that you value him or her as your child and as a child of God and as a person with infinite worth in God's eyes, regardless of your rejection of the behavior or the choices. You don't have to accept their lifestyle or their choices, but you can still say, I love you and you have infinite worth to me, and I still desire to be with you and to do life with you. Now, our next and final session together is going to be about looking ahead, the processing out and looking ahead and rebuilding. So, when we come back, we're going to talk about how to not dwell on the past, and what's happened has happened, and how do we move forward in rebuilding something new now that we've taken this time to really get a reality bite and to experience the feelings we've been having and to understand how we may have skewed some things or gotten off track, and now how we can get back on track and overcome some of this discouragement we've been feeling. So I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for listening. Some questions you can ask yourself as we close are, why have you, or do some parents play the blame game? Why do you think that that's a component? Can you remember blaming someone for something else? Well, if the mother hadn't done this, the kid wouldn't be like that. Have you ever done that before or participated in that kind of mindset? Do you feel an inclination to put up a pretense of perfectionism? Why? Are you trying to put up an image? Are you an image bearer of an image you don't belong behind? These are great questions to ask yourself. I encourage you to discuss them or process them out in your journal or together in your coupling. And I will see you in session 3. Thank you so much, and God bless.